like to call the meeting of the Community Services and Land Use Committee to order. All please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everyone please be seated. Ms. Brock, was public notification of this meeting published, posted, and distributed in compliance with South Carolina Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I will make that a motion. And before we move on, I'd like to remind every council member who's sitting at the dais, when it's your turn to speak, will you please make sure your microphone is close enough to you and that you speak clearly, because it is being taped. People online are constantly texting me that says, we can't hear you. So please make sure you get close enough to the microphone.
I'll second the motion.
On both ends.
Thank
right?
you.
I don't think anybody heard you say that.
All right. So we had a second on approval of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Ms. Brock, do we need to have a roll call of attendees
Yes, ma'am.
before we do the minutes?
Councilmember Tabernick,
Present.
Councilmember Reeds,
Here.
Councilmember Lawson, absent. Councilmember Dawson,
Here.
Councilmember Cunningham, absent. Councilmember Brown, here. Councilmember Bartholomew, absent. Vice Chairman McGillen,
Present.
Chairman Passament,
Present.
Vice Committee Chair Mr. Glover,
Present.
Committee Chair Howard.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. To have a motion, this was January 9th, 2023 minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second? That was made by Council
Second.
Chairman. Thank you. Ms. Brown, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right. Moving along, I would like to read number 6 and remind the audience of a few rules. Anyone who, this is citizens' comments. Can everyone hear me? If anyone who wishes to speak during the citizen comment portion of the meeting will limit their comments to no longer than 3 minutes. We have a total of 15 minutes, which means approximately 5 people will be able to speak, and will address the council in a respectful manner appropriate to the decorum of the meeting, refraining from the use of profane, abusive, or obscene language. We will take these in the order which they signed up. We have 5 people who signed up. I would like to remind you that if you want to have a spokesman for one of the subject areas, I noticed that 3 people are going to speak about the same subject. You could designate one person, and that means more people on the list could speak. But if not, we'll go straight down the list. Is there anyone that wants, the first person is C. Hope Cunningham. Okay. And if you'll state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Constance Hope Cunningham. People who love me call me Hope. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here today because I understand that Beaufort County is seeking partners for the care and maintenance of the former Cherry Hill Plantation parcel on the marshes of Battery Creek. I represent a group of individuals who plan to create a Friends of Cherry Hill Park group to work in collaboration with Beaufort County. Our mission is to preserve and protect the educational, historical, natural, and cultural resources of this tract for the enjoyment of current residents and future generations. Job 1 is to establish an establish an endowment for the ongoing care and maintenance of the 2013 Heritage Live Oak tree and the Mary Pope gravesite. Additionally, it is our intention to raise funds for removing hazard trees, to care for the many landmark and specimen trees on this property, and to assist with hurricane cleanup. We also plan to provide material support for infrastructure improvements and to organize volunteers for landscape cleanup and periodic trash sweeps. These are not empty promises. They represent a firm commitment. As soon as the park is named, we will launch a website and organize a fundraising platform. There is tremendous community interest in this effort, as evidenced by the number of petition signatures shared with Councilwoman Howard and the many talented citizens that have stepped forward to assist with this effort and act as advisors. When the Beaufort County Council meets to vote on this purchase, you will see measurable progress towards these goals. Beaufort County residents want this park, and we are ready to work for it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. The next person is Caroline Carpenter. Do you wish to speak on the same subject still? Okay. Okay. We'll start your 3 minutes now. And state your address.
Can you hear
please.
me okay?
Yes, and state
All
your
right.
address.
Caroline Carpenter, 712 Water Street, Beaufort. Hi, y'all, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the Cherry Hill Oak. I'm a member of the Beaufort County Senior Leadership Class of 2023 and one of a group of 6 who chose to focus on the county's majestic live oaks for our Pinnacle Small Group project. While exploring the importance of the oaks, we discovered the Port Royal Heritage Oak, also known as the Cherry Hill Oak, which had been designated the Trees South Carolina Heritage Tree of the Year in 2013. We found that 10 years later, this spectacular tree, the oldest and largest in the county, is overgrown and neglected. Despite having a girth that's larger than the legendary Angel Oak in Charleston, it is generally unknown and unappreciated. It sits on nearly 12 beautiful acres in Port Royal, overlooking the marshes of the west bank of Battery Creek. After visiting the tree, our group felt compelled to do something about securing the location for a passive park. To that end, we have reviewed the Beaufort County and Town of Port Royal's comprehensive plans, which lay out values that argue strongly for the passive park. We've established a working relationship with Hope Cunningham, who you just heard from, a neighbor of the potential park and curator of the Facebook page Save the Port Royal Heritage Oak, who has been raising awareness, collecting signatures, and investigating funding in support of saving this tree. We have polled immediate neighbors and county residents and found near unanimous support for preserving the oak and the land. And we have contacted tree companies to explore potential commitments for ongoing tree care and maintenance. After our course is finished, several of our group plan to continue working to ensure the continued health of the tree. We enthusiastically support the Rural and Critical Land Program's recommendation to proceed with due diligence on a fee purchase of that land to create a passive park. The Cherry Hill Oak project is in total compliance with the intent and spirit of the Port Royal and Beaufort County's comprehensive plans. We urge you to approve the next step for this project, giving all of us, Beaufort County, private citizens, conservation organizations, and businesses the chance to work together to preserve a magnificent natural asset. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next on the list is Michael Murphy. If you'll state your name and your address.
Michael Murphy, 13 Crescent Avenue, Ladies Island. Good afternoon. So since 1999, the Beaufort County Rural and Critical Land Preservation Program has secured 113 land parcels for just under 24,000 acres of protected property. Every one of those 113 parcels had a key or unique environmental component that spurred the interest of this committee as well as county council and moved them to purchase the properties. This afternoon, many of the people in this room are here to spur on this committee and county council to begin the due diligence in order to add one more parcel and 12 acres to that list. And yes, this site also has an environmental asset, actually a pretty big asset. It's the Cherry Hill Plantation live oak, Beaufort County's oldest and largest tree. There's also 32 other landmark trees on the site, not just live oaks, but red oaks, magnolias, hickories, pines, and they all help to create a diverse environment with many transitional areas. Now, if we just had to compare our options, so we've got a possibility of having 1.5-story townhome development or a passive park anchored by a 350-year-old magnificent tree that bore witness to the founding of the Beaufort District in 1709, I think that it would be an easy decision for everyone to make. The crowd of people here this afternoon, in addition to the petition signers, are showing you the large scale of public interest that there is in this site. They wouldn't be here not for the caliber of the trees and the importance for this site to be preserved for posterity. So we hope at the end of the day that you will all agree with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Gibson Solomons. And if you'll state your name and your address, please.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chairperson, my name is Gibson Solomons. I am a resident and live at 35 Wrights Point Circle. I am here to talk about a matter that is before this committee, although not specifically on the agenda today. As a lifelong resident of the Low Country, I've spent my entire time going to St. Helena's Island. As a child, my favorite place to be was in the Martians on St. Helena's Island. My family's owned property on St. Helena's Island for over 3 generations. I'm an attorney, and in my work, I've spent a large chunk of my time making sure people take responsibility for the environment. I advocate frequently for people who've suffered environmental harms and damage at the hands of irresponsible corporations. I specialize in property-based class actions. I currently am working on separate projects throughout the state that tackle cleaner air, cleaner drinking water, cleaner rivers, cleaner lakes, all at different locations. I believe in environmental stewardship. I would not involve myself in anything unless I believed it was for the best use of our home. I'm only one of many longtime locals who are now working on what we believe is a smart development program for Pine Island. So when I was asked to meet with the current owner of Pine Island over a year ago, I heard his vision of how he wanted to expend significant energy and resources to take a piece of property, preserve its character, and commit to being an environmental steward. I was immediately encouraged. I thought this can be a win for everyone. Pine Island has become a little bit of a political football, but Pine Island's a private island. It has been a private island for over 100 years, and it'll remain a private island. What people should understand and what you should consider as things about Pine Island come before you is there seems to be this prevailing thought that if you kill a particular project, you stop time. But that's not true. You can't. People are going to be moving to Beaufort, and we want that to happen. We want that. And we want to take advantage of opportunities when an able development is committed to environmental and cultural stewardship. I would rather see our county partner with people who have a passion and the ability to develop thoughtfully, with care taken for the land and the people in it. I place substance over form. I ask this committee to place substance over form. This is opposed to shooting down anything so that what happens is we default to an ad hoc sprawl. That's not what anyone wants or anyone can benefit from. I ask this committee to listen to the property owner and his vision. It's full of substance. It's full of a thought for the future and a passion towards environmental stewardship. I would not have attached my name to this if that wasn't so. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Solomons. The last one on the list is Michael R. Campbell. Okay. All right, we'll go, all right, we have one more, David Strange, then. That will be the last one for today. Public comment.
Hello, council. Thank you for having me here. I reside at 32 Wrights Point Circle in Port Royal, coincidentally, a lot that looks directly north and out to the tops of the trees in this exact parcel that we're talking about at Cherry Point. But the main reason that I wanted to speak today is that I had the honor to serve on the task force for the town of Port Royal for the rewrite and the update of the comprehensive plan that we conducted during 2020 and 21. I was specifically asked to be on that committee because of the fact that I live on the west side of what is Port Royal. I was the only representative of the four and felt it my duty and continue to represent the people that live within the bounds of Port Royal on the west side of Battery Creek. During the writing of the comprehensive plan, we sought and received a lot of input from the community. And one of the things that we immediately discovered that in addition to the environmental concerns and the land use concerns that everybody that was queried had, the second most significant comment that we received was to balance, or the overriding theme was to balance the harmony, to balance and have harmony with the natural environment. And that's really not the main thrust of what I wanted to talk about, because I think that's been spoken to already. What I really want to address is the fact that one of the great reveals that we came up with was the fact that the community, of all the things that they deemed to be most important, the number 2 issue was parks. Parks and recreation. On that side of Port Royal, there's only one park that's in the incorporated Port Royal bounds, only one, and it's over in Shell Point. We have no other parks that serve this particular area. During the course of time, we identified the corridor up Paris Island Gateway as a real cognizant noted need for a passive park that would be served specifically by the Cherry Point location. And so therefore, I would really like to advocate, council, to consider moving forward with this process. It's a need of the town that's been identified continuously throughout all of the 140 pages that we have in this plan, and it would serve the community in a new way that it's not currently served today. So
Thank
I
you,
would
Mr. Trainer.
appreciate that consideration.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll close public comments. The next item on the agenda is an update on the staff review team's development projects dashboard. And Mr. Merchant is going to speak to that, and it will be shown up on the screen as we go through it. This is going to be on the county, it is on the county website.
Yes. Well, good afternoon. I'm excited to bring this forward. This is merely for informational purposes, but this is something that our department has been working on over the last 4 or 5 months with the goal of being more transparent about projects that are going on in the county, specifically development projects. And, you know, we've received many phone calls, or even being out in the community, the minute, flags are put on trees for a tree survey, to a sign being put up when people finally know what a business is going to be. People are very curious about when development is going on. And so the goal of this is early on in the process, the development review process, when conceptual approval is given, to be able to provide these projects on a map with as much information so that people could see the site plan, elevations, and keep that up until a certificate of occupancy is issued for that. So just really quickly, we can kind of walk through this. And Mark Davis, who has really spearheaded this for our department, and I give him almost all the credit, I'll say. It can kind of walk you through it. But on the the far side of the page, we have the types of projects, the development or design review boards, and then staff reviewed projects. So you could either click on that and then all of those types of projects appear, or you can go through each individual project either on the map, by clicking on a symbol that is on the map, or on the list of projects that are there. And the information will be provided is all the basic information about the nature of the development, the partners involved. And then in addition, site plan, if we have elevations, those are there as well. And we really focused on what it is that the public wants to see. They want to see basically what the layout looks like and what the building's going to look like. And so, the goal is to keep this active, keep projects up here as long as they're under construction, and, be able to provide this information to the public. And I wanted to give a lot of credit also to our GIS department, to Dan Morgan and Ian Deneve, who put a lot of work into this, and then on my staff, Nancy Moss. I will say the GIS department made this very easy for us, and we were able to, once they got it up and running, very easily plug in projects. So, invite every council member. This is linked to the front page of the county website, and invite you all to look around on it and look at the active projects. And
Do you have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So I actually, when this came out with the Beaufort thing, I actually went on and played with this. I thought it was, well, not played with it, used it. I thought it was very helpful, and I am presenting to one of our neighborhoods Thursday, and they've asked me to show how this works. So I think this is really good information. I think the issue will be you keeping it up.
yes.
I mean, that's a challenge, but I think it's great information and makes good information for the public to see.
Yeah. And we're committed, that's something that we internally, we place a lot of value on getting this information out there, but
It's very nice.
thank you.
Any questions or other comments? I think it'll be a great tool for
Yeah.
any
I
citizen.
think this is wonderful, thanks.
It's wonderful. Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Step in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, moving on to number 8, recommend approval to undertake due diligence and discussions / negotiations for proposed purchase of development rights on real property known as Station Creek PDR. And Ms. Schaefer's gonna talk to us about that.
All right, good afternoon. You have a couple of rural and critical projects that are before you this afternoon that have come out of Q4 of our application process. As a reminder, for those listening and those in the room, we take rural and critical applications quarterly. Our next deadline is March 30th. The 2 projects for due diligence before you today came from the December 31st deadline. And our process is such that we bring projects to the Rural and Critical Board. They make recommendations for due diligence, which come to y'all for recommendation, and then they make recommendations for approval or not once the due diligence is complete. The first 2 projects are due diligence projects only. The first is called Station Creek, which is a conservation easement project on St. Helena. It's 124 acres off of Seaside Road. Again, not a whole lot is known at this point because we haven't yet done the appraisal and the survey and the phase 1 that are part and parcel of our due diligence. But this is just some background on the project. If you go to the next slide, you can see a location map in context with the other protected lands on St. Helena. This is a waterfront property, again, off of Seaside Road, surrounded by a lot of agricultural fields and ag use type properties. If you go to the next slide, you'll see our picture highlighting the critical habitat priority layer in the Beaufort County green print. As we commonly see, marsh front and maritime forest, especially those with out islands, rank or score high according to critical habitat priority because of the ecosystem services they provide for migratory birds and other species critical in Beaufort County. And then the last slide is some pictures of the property, and I believe you have a project analysis with all these maps and location information. The property is mostly high ground. There's some cattle on it today. There's 1 dock existing on the island piece. And the concept is envisioned for a conservation easement on the property. And the staff recommends, and the board is sending this to you with a recommendation for spending due diligence to do an appraisal and discuss easement terms and come back to you with a final product.
Okay, I'll open it up for questions from the committee.
Madam
Yes.
Chairman, I'd like to put this, place this in motion, that we can have discussion on it.
Okay, you make a motion to do due diligence.
Due diligence
Do I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
All right, a second by Ms.
I do have a
Davenant.
question.
Yes.
So I'm reading this, it says a hummock island.
Yes.
I tried to look up what is a hummock island, and I got it up in the North Bay.
Okay, so hummock or hammock is a term that is colloquially used to describe the marsh islands that kind of dot our coast as a place of rest. It is true for indigenous people as well as plant and animal species. You can find a lot of ecosystem services and habitat value on these hummock or hammock islands. They're essentially protected islands of refuge. So both the English translation and the use from a human and animal perspective
Got it.
is a place
Thank
of
you.
rest. And we have a lot of marsh islands that are hummock or hammock islands in Beaufort County. And Beaufort County really led the way in protecting those islands, both with the comprehensive plan and land protection efforts, but also the origin of some Bridges to Marsh Island legislation that was replicated statewide. So it's a great question. Happy to.
That's my new learning for the
There you
day,
go.
right there.
All the real naturalists and ecologists in the room can send you emails to correct me, but when I was a kayak guide, that was the necessary interpretation
Okay, thank you.
for tourists. So I can stand corrected if there's more to learn.
Other questions while we're in discussion? Great question. All right.
How big
Oh,
is
yeah.
this project? How big is this? Do you know? The
How,
acreage?
it's 124 acres, is that right?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not,
Aye.
aye. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We go forward with due diligence. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
The next one is due diligence too.
Yes. All right. Well, the next property you heard a little bit about during public comment. This rural and critical application, again, came to us late last fall and is recommended by the board, staff and the board for due diligence this afternoon. This is an 11.9 acre property in the town of Port Royal off of Oakview Drive. And if you go to the next slide, you can see a location map. The blue markers are the property itself. The other colors are other forms of county, municipal, protected land in some way, shape, or form. The next slide, this is off of Paris Island Gateway. The next slide shows the properties in more detail. It's actually 3 parcels that make up the approximately 12 acres. You'll see the light green shaded above it. That's an open land trust conservation easement that was a separate private easement several years ago. And then the property in yellow is the old school district, just to familiarize if you've been on the old, or the admin building. If you go to the next slide, just as we looked at with critical habitat for a conservation easement property, we considered the potential for public use of fee-owned properties, and this property scores high according to passive recreation need. The deep red colors are the highest ranking for passive recreation. So as you heard in the public comment, a lot of the conversation at the board level was about the lack of public access opportunities in this area and the ways this might, in 10 or 15 years, look like a very proactive measure to provide water access in this location in the growing parts of the town and the county. If you go to the next slide, this is just the composite green print that aligns all 7 layers for the green print, just to show you kind of where we are in context. You'll see those 2 spine roads. And the next piece is why a lot of people have spoken today, and that is the aesthetics and the tree canopies already provided on the property. So if you go to the, these are not the Cherry Hill oak trees, but the other specimen trees that exist on the property. It's rather terracing in nature. So it's gradually slopes downward toward the water into the marshes of Battery Creek, which you can see on the next slide. There's a ground, there's this piece of solid ground that extends toward the marshes, ending in a sandy spit there that does provide, visual and physical water access, which was, after hearing so much about the tree, a really surprising element and an interesting feature, especially considering public access to the water being a criteria we talk a lot about with rural and critical lands. So this was a pleasant surprise on the site visit. The next slide shows you pictures of the tree itself, as well as the grave marker for Mary Pope, an enslaved woman who's buried on the property. And because my photography skills are not as good as those that you will find with trees SC in the island packet, the final slide has pictures that are taken by real professionals, and the tree does in fact look beautiful. I just couldn't capture that on my iPhone. So that's a little bit about this Cherry Hill Oak property. Again, this is a due diligence vote during which we would do an appraisal, a survey, a phase one analysis, and we would talk to partners for partnership, both in terms of funds and maintenance and other things. In the due diligence phase, it sounds like I may have a lot of due diligence partners to follow up with after today's meeting. But that is where we are, again, coming to you with a recommendation from the staff and the Rural and Critical Lands Board to pursue due diligence. Are there
I'll
any
entertain
questions?
a motion in a second so we can discuss it. Any,
So move for the motion.
I'll second that.
oh, okay. Did you get that, Ms. Brock? All right, we'll open for discussion and questions. Yes, sir.
I have one, I don't know whether it's appropriate or not, but I would love for Mr. Murphy to make comment on the oak tree itself, the health, the condition of that oak tree,
Sure.
if it's okay,
Make sure
Madam
the
Chairman.
microphone is close to you.
Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Would you,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy, could you do that for us?
Just
The condition,
Just
health of
from
it?
your professional assessment, we're not gonna hold you, you know.
Okay, when it was originally discovered in 2009 with the Beaufort 3 Century Project, it hadn't been maintained in maybe forever. Mike McPhee used to live next door, and he gave us a little bit of a history of what, that the tree was just always there. But in 1959, Hurricane Gracie took a huge section of it out, and it just laid there on the ground. So when we came upon it, and I owned a tree company at the time, we were able to start maintenance on it and to try to get it, kind of bring it up to par for, a tree of that age. And so right now, it hasn't been maintained in about 10 or 12 years, and it needs to get into that cycle because there's a new kind of regime for mature trees, mature veteran trees like this, and it's every 10 or 15 years, they need a certain amount of reduction done to their limbs, and it makes them, it increases their stability and doesn't let them break it, it lessens their chances of breaking in storms. So, without an insect or disease pest for the live oak, this is the way to keep it maintained for forever, really, as far as we're concerned. Yeah. So right now it's not, and so the big condition is underneath the tree. The tree hasn't been, it's just been kind of let to grow, and there's a lot of yaupon and stuff coming up. So there's a lot of ground maintenance that needs to be done under direction. I mean, we don't want the counties to go out, the county crew to go out there and rough it up yet. So, we're making a list of things that need to be done to the tree. And like Hope had said, we have partners coming in, and we'll see what we can do. But right now, the tree's in good shape.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Okay.
Any other
Anything?
questions or discussion?
I have just a couple things for the committee to consider.
Yes, sir.
It's my understanding, typically when we acquire property inside of a municipality, we look for some sort of partnership opportunity with regards to maintenance of parks and trees and things like that that were purchased. We have that agreement with the city of Beaufort at Whitehall Park that was recently completed. It's a showpiece for both the county and the city of Beaufort. The town of Port Royal has refused to engage in such partnership on this acquisition, as I understand it. So I would just encourage the committee as you vote. I'm okay with the due diligence, but I would not be in favor of you all going through with the fee simple acquisition without some sort of financial commitment from the town of Port Royal to assist with the maintenance of the park and the tree, so that the county is not bearing that burden long term. We have no funding currently programmed, and I do not foresee any programmed funding in the near future to build a park on this property through rural and critical.
Another, Fort Frederick, we partnered with the town of Port Royal on it. Yeah, so we have a motion and we have a second. This is just for due diligence. And we will remember that if it comes back for us for acquisition. And those of you in the audience who live in the town of Port Royal might want to pay heed to what was said to in whatever manner you can.
Yeah, this is a planning situation in my mind. If this property is under development pressure and was a part of a development agreement that was recently entered into by the town, given the significance of this tree, then the town staff should have, through the development agreement, I'm speculating now, I don't know that's the situation. I think it is. They should have it through the development agreement, required the preservation of this tree and protected this tree through that development agreement process. But we will work with the town and communicate with them on what we need their assistance with, and we hope that we will get that.
Okay. Without objection.
Can I ask just a
Yes,
question?
sir.
Mr. Greenway, is it your understanding that the current owner has engaged in a development agreement with a party to develop that land?
I think that's the history, but I'm not 100% sure that that's the history. I'm pretty sure that this tree was subject of some controversy some time ago. I may be getting two issues in Port Royal confused, but I do believe that's the same tree, right?
If I may, first of all, as a reminder, the Rural and Critical Program works with willing landowners, and this property was under contract with a party that had intentions for development previously last summer. That party left the contract and is no longer involved, and the landowner, in pursuing other options, reached out and applied to the Rural and Critical Program.
Okay.
And so there is no kind of competing development pending right now. The landowner applied to the program, and I did speak with the town of Port Royal and the planning director with respect to sensitivities to, buying down development rights in areas that are growth areas. There's always a balance to be achieved, right, in terms of incentivizing development patterns within the urban growth boundary and buying land for conservation in areas that are designated for growth. And there was a common understanding about the benefits of the passive recreation potential of this property, which is why that green print layer is so informative. And again, why I think in a growing part of the town, this could look like a proactive opportunity a couple years down the road. But those conversations with the town of Port Royal have been started. They've been positive, and I'm happy to continue them in due diligence. And again, to anyone listening or watching or ever wondering about a rural and critical project, we again rely on willing landowners and partnerships to make the deals the best they can be for the Beaufort County taxpayer. So happy to entertain all thoughts on partnerships and potential there.
Any other
Thank you, Dave.
questions?
Thank you.
Without objection, the motion will pass. Due diligence, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, number 10, recommend approval of an ordinance for text amendments to the Community Development Code, sections 3.1.60 and 3.2.60, T Rural Center Standards, and the 4.1.220 Residential Storage Facility to conditionally allow the use of residential storage facility within the T2 Rural Center. And Mr. Merchant will talk to us about this item.
Okay. This is a citizen-initiated text amendment to the Community Development Code. And what they are requesting is we have an existing district, T2 Rural Center, and it is to add a use called residential storage facilities as a conditional use in that district. And just to clear up some confusion, residential storage facilities in our code, that's the name for your typical storage rental units. The people, when they have run out of room in their own house, they pay additional money and, rent some additional space. And so it's your typical self-storage or residential storage facility. The T2 Rural Center Zone is basically, it's mostly in our rural areas, but we do have some locations in southern Beaufort County that are more on the edges of the municipalities. But it is a mixed-use commercial district that is more in a rural scale. It allows retail and offices up to about 15,000 square feet. It does allow a lot of other types of uses such as vehicle sales, outdoor maintenance storage yards, warehouses, and wholesaling and distribution. And because of those other uses, when this request was made to add this particular use to the T2 Rural Center, it seemed to be compatible with those other kind of uses and with the intent of the district. As far as the location of the T2 Rural Center districts, there's only 6 locations in the county. 4 of them are north of the Broad and located in more rural areas, Labico, Gardens Corner, north of the Whale Branch. The intersection of Sea Island Parkway and Distant Island Roads in the Eustis community, and then on the western edges of the Corners community on St. Helena all have that zoning. In southern Beaufort County, there is an area in Pritchardville, the commercial area of Pritchardville is zoned T2 Rural Center, in addition to a piece of land, several parcels along Burnchurch Road and Almer Road, going east of Bluffton toward the Alljoy community. This is being proposed as a conditional use, which means that it's a permitted use as long as the applicant meets an additional set of conditions that are specifically outlined in our code. And what is being proposed for this particular amendment is that where this use would be allowed in the T2 Rural Center, if this were adopted, the buildings could only be located on the interior of the block if they're facing a major collector or arterial street. So the idea is if you're on 46 or you're on Sea Island Parkway, this use wouldn't be fronting the road. It would be something that there would be uses in that district in front of it, and it would be placed behind that particular use. A lot of that is just trying to maximize the available frontage in that particular district to more higher and better uses that are more retail and service oriented, rather than a use like this, which is rather land intensive and doesn't generate a lot of traffic and doesn't need to be right on the road. So with that, this is a citizen-initiated amendment. Staff in reviewing this, our recommendation is approval. This did go before our Planning Commission at their February meeting, and the Planning Commission recommended denial of this application. And the applicant is here, Nancy Hawes.
Okay, we will give her the 3 minutes to speak.
May I?
Yes, ma'am.
This is just a map.
And we're gonna give you just 3 minutes, so.
Excuse me?
Just 3 minutes, so.
Yes. It just shows how big the county is, and these small green spots is what the only T2 RC community. Thank you for having me. I hope everybody's doing well. I appreciate you letting me speak. My name is Nancy Howes, and I have owned the property off Burnchurch Road since 1995. It was originally zoned general commercial and was rezoned by the county, which is another conversation I will not get into here. As of 4+ years ago, it was rezoned T2RC. I initiated the zoning text amendment change request due to the development interest in my property for construction of a residential storage facility to serve residential areas adjacent to Old Town Bluffton, along the May River Road, around Alljoy Road, and along Burnchurch. The storage options currently available to these areas require residents to drive significant distances on high-traffic roadways. I researched the allowed uses in my zoning classification, discovered that storage yards, warehousing, and distribution facilities are allowed, but not residential self-storage. I thought this would be a minor text change and would be consistent with the current permissible uses. The Planning Commission voted a text change down on February 3rd, primary citing possible proliferation of unkept facilities in T2 RC zone around the county. Of the 360,000 acres in Beaufort County, there are only 247 acres of this zoning in 6 different scattered locations around the unincorporated Beaufort County, which puts the Planning Commission concern in context that there is not much opportunity for a proliferation of unsightly self-storage construction outcomes. The planning staff recommended staff approval of this text amended and indicated it is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan. It is not in conflict with the development code. It addresses a demonstrated community need by giving nearby rural residents storage options which they currently do not have, and is compatible with other uses. Am I done?
You got 27 seconds.
In the T2 RC zone. It would allow logical and orderly development pattern and would have to adhere to natural resource protection standards as other commercial development in this zone must. I respectfully request you approve the addition of residential storage facilities as a conditional use in the T2 RC zone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Merchant, you could come back to this podium and then you can, we may have some questions for him, so thank you for your comments. Before I entertain a motion, do we have any questions regarding this? We'll start with you, Councilman
How
McCollum.
big is the property?
5 acres.
We're gonna
Yeah.
let Mr. Merchant answer, sorry.
Well, Nancy Hall's property is 5 acres, but this text amendment would allow this use anywhere where it's zoned T2 Rural Center
Right.
in those 6 areas around the county.
Is this property intended to be sold to a developer to put up the self-storage, or is the current owner keeping it?
I can't speak to that. It's my understanding that it would be sold, but
So sold with the promise of building a self-storage?
Not
yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
Right, not necessarily.
But if they want to put up a self-storage, they can. If they don't, they'll go elsewhere. I'm just,
Okay.
So we're uncertain if whoever buys the property will actually put up a self-storage.
That is correct.
that,
Yes,
I have a
ma'am.
question. Exactly where is it on Burnt Church Road?
it's not on Burn Church Road. It's, if you turn on, Stroop Lane, which is 500 feet in, it's,
What lane? I'm sorry.
Stroop Lane, you know where Brewer
You have a
Street
map?
is?
Yes, I
You
do.
go directly.
Where Old Bluffton Florist is, on the corner there?
Burn Church Park.
Okay, all right.
And if you came out of Bruin Road, took a left to go to 278.
Yes.
You went straight across,
Yes.
that goes to the Omer property.
Oh, okay.
It's down there 500 feet. It's not even on a public road.
Do
Right,
you have a
okay.
map, Mr. Rob Merchant, available?
Not for this, I mean, we could probably bring one up, but
Does that-
it's, I don't know if you know where the Walk is. That's a new development on Burnt Church Road.
Yes, I do.
If you're on Burnt Church Road and the Walk is on your left, this would be back behind the properties. It's behind a development called Lost Hollow Business Park.
I have one more question.
Yeah, okay, Councilman McCollum.
Rob, if this is sold and a storage facility is not erected, what are the other possibilities that could go on that land with this change in the
There's a whole list.
Okay.
There's a whole list.
community
So-
development code?
The property is zoned T2 Rural Center, so
Right.
any use, as long as it's meeting the restrictions and requirements of that district. So it could allow a number of smaller scale, I'm probably not retail in that location, but it would be permitted, service uses, offices, that are up to 15,000 square feet, along with some light industrial uses.
And are there residential areas adjacent to this property?
It does adjoin across the street, the Walk, which is a new development. I believe that's a Pulte.
Residential?
Single-family homes, yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes,
please.
ma'am.
So if I look at this map, Mr. Merchant, you're telling me there's 6 facilities currently?
Six
Correct.
areas.
6 areas zoned
6
T2
areas
Rural
zoned.
Center.
But then I heard you say just a moment ago, if we change this text amendment, it opens up other zones. That's what the planning commission's worried about? not
No.
just this one here.
No, this is a change. So the other thing I should have mentioned is that this particular use, self-storage, is allowed in all of our other commercial districts. C3 or C4 and C5, which are our two mixed-use, community scale and regional scale commercial districts, along with the T4 district. So it is allowed in basically every other commercial district, along with our light industrial. And so as staff, when somebody makes a text amendment, we're very careful because a text amendment does not just apply to one property, it applies to everywhere that is zoned for that use. And so we want to make sure that every location where this particular use could occur, that it would be compatible. And so, in our evaluation of the district, this particular use was very similar to other uses that district allowed. And so that, but yes, when it's a map amendment, it's applying to one area, and you're going to simply affect that area. When you're making a text amendment, it's everywhere that district is located.
Okay. Chairman Passman?
Yes, am I reading this incorrectly? The planning commission voted the text change down, citing a possible proliferation of unkempt facilities in the T2RC zone? Are they saying that if you allow the residential storage unit, they're going to be an unkempt facility?
I think they were worried about opening up.
Ma'am, let's let the staff answer his question,
Yeah.
please.
And it was my understanding of that conversation, I'd have to listen to it again, is that they were concerned that many of these types of uses around the county are not kept up, maybe some of the older facilities. Regardless, they would have to follow all of the county's requirements for buffers, screening, architectural standards. So, but that was the concern that the planning commission had.
Okay, so we have residential storage units in other T2R zones.
Not in T2 Rural Center,
Center,
but
okay.
we allow them in just about, our other commercial districts, C4, C5, S1 industrial, all of those allow this particular use. And so, we have quite a number of them just south of the Broad.
Okay.
Councilman Glover?
Yeah, I just want to respond to Chairman Passman's question and comments. If I'm not mistaken, there is an abandoned storage facility on St. Helena that's right now is not being used as a storage facility. It's open and it's almost like a habitat for homeless. And I think those are kind of things that people are very nervous about.
I think that's a risk of any older building, that's not kept up. I don't know that this, from my knowledge of this particular use, whether this particular use is more susceptible to that type of decay. It's,
Any abandoned?
we treat it as any other type of use, that if it's not kept up and abandoned, it could lead to, being a hazard or, that.
Well, it is right now because it's not being used and it's almost like a shelter for the homeless.
Sure. Mr. Atkinson, would you like to address?
Sure, thank you very much.
Meeting.
A couple of points. If you'll let me know where that is, I have code enforcement staff, we will take care of that. Any building that's unsecured or dilapidated, we have ordinances in place, we can take care of that. So I don't know that would be a concern in this case because we have tools to handle that. I just wanted to make the point that this is not a rezoning request. This is adding this particular use in this particular zoning district. I think we may have gotten a little sideways looking at one parcel. This is for all of the parcels in this district, and staff feels like that it's an acceptable use. It fits because of the overall aesthetic and use in those center districts. So that's sort of the nexus of the conversation. It's not rezoning, it's adding this particular development type in that zoning district. But if you'll let me know where that is, I'll be happy, or any unsecured building like that, you'll let me know where they are, we'll certainly take action on it.
I had one question. The 15,000 square feet would be applied to this facility if, no matter where, if it was added or not?
Rob, 15,000 is the max? I'll let Rob answer that question.
That is not in the conditions that are being proposed. That's certainly something council could add. But we're more concerned about the location of the facility on major roads and putting in a location that is not fronting to major highways.
Councilman Dawson, some of these are in your district, this zoning in particular. Do you have any questions?
No, I was just gonna ask, Chuck, to the concern that the planning commission, can you hear me? To the concern that the planning commission may have had as far as, this being, not kept, upkeep and becoming unsightly or a hazard to the, community and surrounding properties. Our building code would, our building codes enforcement would apply to this particular project as well as any project of this magnitude in the county, will it not?
So instead of just giving you a simple yes, I do want to say that I appreciate what the planning commission does. They have a tough job and they weigh this. There's a lot of subjectivity and opinion that goes into their decisions, and I respect what they do. Yes, we have the tools. Any commercial building that is dilapidated, that is open, that is vacant and open, if it's vacant and secured and being maintained, we don't get involved with it. If it is dilapidated, if it has windows broken out, doors open, if it becomes a blight or a threat to the community, we will absolutely step in, and we do it all the time. And we have the ordinances in place to take care of those types of issues. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Atkinson, is it safe to say that if this ordinance or a text amendment changes this to a T2 rural center and allows, to allow residential storage facilities in T2 rural centers, not just in this district, but anywhere there's a T2 rural center, if that's a text change? It applies to the whole county, not just there.
Countywide in this district, yes, sir.
What do you mean in this
Okay,
district?
so the T2 Rural Center is a zoning district. That is a
Right.
zoning designation.
Right,
Anywhere that zoning designation is located through the county,
yeah.
adding this to the list of allowed, even though it's a conditional use, would allow those types of developments to go anywhere in the county in that zoning district, yes.
Right, so if the other 5 exist, they can do it there. Wherever there's a T2 rural center, now storage facilities would be allowed.
Yes, sir, and staff feels like that's an acceptable
Right.
use in the center.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time, if there's no further questions, I entertain a motion to either to approve the text amendment or not to approve the text amendment.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second by Councilman Dawson. We're gonna do a roll call vote. All in favor of the text amendment? Well, or you're gonna call by name? Let's call by name. In favor of the text amendment?
Councilmember Tabernick,
I'm in favor.
Councilmember Reeds,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Councilmember Dawson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Vice Chair McEllen,
Yes.
Chairman Passament,
Yes.
Vice Chair, Mr. Glover,
No.
Committee Chair Howard.
Yes.
Okay. 7, yes, the motion passes.
All right, moving on to number 11.
Just go to full council.
We'll go to full council. Yes, sir. Yes. All right. The next item is recommend approval of an ordinance for a zoning map amendment / rezoning request for 1 acre at 3 Benton Lane from T3 Edge to T2 Rural Center. And Mr. Merchant?
Okay, so this one is a zoning map amendment. So this specifically applies to one area in the Pritchardville community. I don't know if you'll be able to, it's in the map is in the packet. Okay, so the applicant is Dr. Campbell, a local, getting this right, optometrist, who is interested in changing the zoning of this site to accommodate a medical office building. This is in the Pritchardville community, and if you look at the map that is on the screen, it is the property that is outlined in red. This is on the south side of 46 in Pritchardville. If you go about a quarter mile to the west, you reach the Circle and New Riverside community and the commercial area that's over there. If you go about a quarter mile to the east, you reach the intersection with Gibbet Road, where there is another small area that is zoned T2 Rural Center. The current zoning of this property is T3 Edge, and that is primarily a residential single-family district that is applied to the majority of the Pritchardville community, pretty much defined by Gibbet Road, 170, in the land that is in the county, and then some of the lands that are to the south of 46. Because of that zoning and that it is primarily residential, what the applicant is wanting to do is change the zoning to T2 Rural Center, which you should have some familiarity with now. And that district would allow a medical office building on this site. Some of the concerns that staff has is that there is currently a property, that rectangular shaped property that's located directly to the west of this, was rezoned by county council in 2021. That was a specific case where the owner of that property had some, what he believed were vested, or there was a history in that property where at one time they had a permit to develop a convenience store and gas station. That permit expired in the early 2000s, but they were interested in developing that as a commercial site. They submitted for a zoning amendment, and that amendment passed county council in 2021. Staff at that time had concerns because it's located in between two other commercial districts, and the concern was not to strip out the entire frontage of 46 with commercial development, but have it clustered at the existing commercial node at Gibbet Road, and then the one that is in the town of Bluffton over at 170 and 46. And so what our concern is what we see as an expansion of a district that, we really, that we really don't believe needs to be here. The other concern is that this site, the nearest water and sewer is located basically where the Publix is, at 46 and 170 in the town of Bluffton. And the other thing is that the T2 Rural Center, that larger rectangular property, is still undeveloped. So it was upzoned, but that property is not developed. And so in addition, what we see is adding another commercial property to a district where there's still capacity on the piece of property that's located directly to the west. For these reasons, it recommended denial of this application. Certainly understand the need and the interest of developing another medical office facility and why this property may be attractive, but we believe that, we have concerns about introducing a new commercial district in this location. The Planning Commission also at the February meeting recommended denial of this application.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Well, the applicant is
Oh,
here.
the
so-
applicant's here
yeah.
to speak. Okay, the applicant, if you'll come
Rob.
forward and state your name and your address. and you-
Mr. Chairman, can
Yes.
I get Rob, is the T2RC to the left, is it already developed?
No.
So it's vacant? Rob, what was the history? There was some controversy over the rezoning of that property. Those guys that were here representing that rezoning said they were gonna build something immediately on the property? What was that? It was like some sort of bank, or it was some sort of office use, was it not?
Right, right.
And they claimed that it used to be zoned commercial, and then it got rezoned, or they were paying commercial taxes on the property or something. That was the first time that county council rezoned property to commercial because someone made a claim that the county had changed zoning of people's property without them having knowledge
They
of
said
that.
they had no knowledge that they're zoning it.
Right.
Yes,
That's
and it was at the time that they received a permit. This was in the early 2000s, I believe it was 2004, and this is for that larger rectangular property. They, were able to get a permit for a convenience store gas station. That permit expired, they never acted on it. And then I'm sorry, I should have mentioned also that in 2014, Beaufort County adopted the Community Development Code. At that time, that was rendered, non-conforming. It was residential, and so that was the argument that the applicant 2 years ago used to recommend changing the zoning of that property to T2 Rural Center.
And there's nothing now? There's nothing?
There's no development on the property.
Because there's no market for development on the property. The property cannot be sold because no one wants to put a commercial business there because there's so many commercially zoned properties where people are actually going to. This is purely speculative rezoning and is a bad planning idea to continue to rezone property down that frontage on that 2-lane road to commercial. You're going to lose the entire character of that corridor if this continues.
At this time, we'll let the applicant have 3 minutes. If you'll state your name and address.
Michael
Just
Connor.
one person, but.
Yep. That's the owner. I'm the
Well,
architect.
one of you can speak, and just decide who.
So I'm Michael Campbell, and I am looking, and my father looking to purchase and put a medical office, optometrist office on there. I have photos of what we did in the Bluffton area for the office, and then there's a piece of land that shows you what we're putting it on. Can I bring this to you all? And what they're saying is to try to make it where it's not the essence of Pritchardville or Beaufort County, but if you look at that piece of land, we have the building ourselves that we put in Bluffton is what we're similarly putting on that piece of land. And that land itself right now doesn't have any trees or any development on it right now. The reason why we're using this land and the other is because there is no water or sewage. With that being said, the land that we're trying to get does have water and sewage that'll allow us that we don't have to tap in from the publics down the road. Now, with this office, we are trying to serve the people of Pritchardville. Recently, I had a patient that was actually from Savannah. There was no one, the emergency room wasn't taking them, and they called us because we're the only one that's 24/7. They had an eye issue, they called us, and they had to drive all the way from Savannah, not being able to see. What happens is in Pritchardville, this happens, they're close, they have someone to take care of. So what we're trying to push here is a building to serve the people of Pritchardville, to give them the access of eye care that they deserve. And if you look at those pictures, you have the building, and then there's a piece of land with that's already has no trees on it, so we're not taking any of the trees, we're not trying to strip it down, we're actually trying to add some beauty to that area, to that road, that will give people what they like or what they want for eye care. That's what I have to say.
Could you state your address too, for the record?
My address, I'm 181 Alljoy Road, is where I live.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you. At this time.
I have a question.
Yes,
What-
I'll entertain questions before
Yeah.
we have a motion.
What
Yes.
is this a picture of? Is this a current office or a rendering?
That is the current office that we have.
Where is this located?
Old Town Bluffton, 27 Dr. Melanchon Drive.
Oh, okay.
Any questions before we entertain a motion? All right, I entertain a motion for either for approval or not approval.
I'll make a motion recommending approval.
Do I have a
I'll
second?
second that, yes.
Okay, discussion?
The motion is to approve.
Yeah, for an ordinance, to allow the building.
I do have a discussion
Yes.
point. So this is a very congested area. It's right in, around my district. And I agree with the staff about the spot zoning and just more concerns about commercial in that area. This is kind of an exploding area. And I question, since this is in Old Town Bluffton, it's really not that far away for somebody, you know, if you're coming from Savannah, you're not that far to get to this one. That's why I asked where this one was.
Any other questions, discussion?
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Maria, this is your district?
Yeah, I think it hits mine. I don't have the exact address.
It's either Logan's or.
Oh, it's Gibbet Road and May River. That's either me or Logan, right down there.
Madam Chairman, can I?
Yes. Well, wait, were you through, Councilman Glover?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with staff as well. Thank you.
Councilman Brown?
May I ask that Dr. Campbell come back up because?
He had his
No.
3 minutes.
No, I'm
ma'am.
just saying, there was an issue, in relation to Councilman Tabernick. There are a lot of people in Sun City that need an eye doctor, and this is a lot closer, this area is closer to them than the other office in Old Town Bluffton.
Well-
That's my understanding.
Well, that's fine if you wanted to state that, that's fine, but we're not gonna allow any more public comment about it.
Oh, okay.
Any other discussion? This, just for, as chairman, I would like to state that I think this is spot zoning, and in light of the other parcel that was rezoned, I voted against it when it came up before. I think this is spot zoning and not good planning practices, from my own opinion. So we have a motion,
A motion to second,
and second, we'll do a roll call vote.
That's for a roll call. Thank you.
Yes, I am going to ask for a roll call vote.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Tabernick?
No.
Councilmember Reeds?
Yes.
Councilmember Dawson?
No?
Councilmember Brown?
Yes?
Vice Chair McEllen?
Yes.
Chairman Passamet?
No.
Committee Vice Chair Glover?
No.
Committee Chair Howard?
No.
5 no, the motion fails.
Motion failed, okay. All right, moving on.
So just so
Yes.
everyone clears, this is a recommendation, so it will
still
still
go to full
proceed to
council.
full council
Yes.
with a negative recommendation from land use.
Thank
or
you.
Community
Yes,
service.
I should have stated that. All right, moving on to the next one. Am I at number 12?
Yep.
All right, 12. Recommend approval of an ordinance for zoning map amendment rezoning request for 2.81 acres at the intersection of Okatee Highway 170 and Low Country Drive 462 from T2 rural to C4 community service mixed use. And Mr. Merchant will brief us on that
You're
one.
busy tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This particular rezoning has a little bit of history to it. The first is, if you're wondering why there's two little properties that are kind of sitting out there on their own, going all the way back to 2000, this used to be a T intersection with 170 when it was 2 lanes, and the Kohler tract was bounded, by 170, and then it hit 462 and then turned into 170 and went toward Bluffton. In the early 2000s, Highway 170 was widened to 4 lanes. That intersection was smoothed out, so there would be, wouldn't be a T intersection, and it rendered 2 small properties on the other side, still part of the Kohler tract, but, basically on the Jasper County side, but still in Beaufort County. This particular property, the Kohler tract, is surrounded on 3 sides by Oldfield. And back earlier, actually last year in the spring, This went before the Planning Commission as a proposed rezoning that was a combination of C3, which is kind of a suburban scale residential district, and then C5, which was commercial multifamily along 170. At that time, the Planning Commission denied or recommended denial of the application, but recommended that staff work with the applicant on some solutions to the property that would be more consistent with the comprehensive plan. Since that time, and as you're aware, council has approved the pursuit of this piece of land as future county property. So it's rendered this little sliver of land on the Jasper County side still owned, that would still be retained by the owner of the property. And the concern is with the T2 rural zoning, with the small awkward shape of that property, it pretty much renders the property useless. And so the recommendation is to upzone the property to C4 community center mixed use, which would match the zoning of the neighboring property on that side, the other remnant of the original Kohler tract. We believe that would still, it would allow some use of the property. It would be very limited because of the size of the property and the awkward shape, but it would allow some use of this property by the owner. And so staff recommends, this is a staff-initiated amendment, recommend approval of the property. And I believe, Jared, did you know, I know that there are some concerns about this particular intersection and that the county has been, working through these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as it pertains to the intersection that right now, we're doing some preliminary work as far as the 170 near-term project to expand the intersection. We're also looking at long-term if that intersection should be reconfigured to a solution where it's not right there on the corner. And as that pertains to the Kohler tract that we're looking at separately, regardless, in its current condition, there would be some very high restrictions from DOT on the use of where the driveways could be on this property. On their access manual, they have terms on how far it can be from a particular intersection. I don't know, I didn't look at it specifically to see what that distance is, but so they would be limited to a right in, right out, most likely on the point, the triangle end of the property, and potentially limited on where if and when an access could be granted on the 462 side of the portion. So it may be too close to the signal as well. So with those restrictions where the driveway access, it would really constrict what type of development could be site development could be laid out on this site. So regardless of what type of commercial use it is, I would be I would think that the use would be very limited on what type of facility could be on this small 3-acre parcel. That helps.
Does anyone have any questions regarding this before we entertain a motion?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Why did the planning commission deny? I'm just looking for a question on that.
Well, I know that
Here comes
they're very concerned about the 170 corridor in general. And so when staff presented this, we really wanted to contrast between what was being proposed last summer when it was the entire Kohler tract and the upzoning to just this remnant, and so, so I would say that it mainly had to do with concerns about the 170 corridor.
Which one of you want to speak
Yeah.
to?
All of them, look at them.
I'll say traffic was the biggest concern. Additionally, with the Kohler tract that is being potentially purchased on a separate issue to the south, as mentioned in the previous rezoning, that there was some upzoning requests there, whether that was to happen or not to be a different story. But with the proposed use as a law enforcement center, that is reducing the traffic impact specific to that area and that intersection alone. So those 97 acres are going to be protected with that different use than what would happen have it be a single family or a multifamily or mixed commercial there. So
Mr. Jackson, you want to?
So a lot of the discussion at the Planning Commission was about the left turning lane and the stacking turning down 462. And as Jared said, replanning all of this will accommodate for that.
Right.
So I guess the whole point of all of us rushing up here is to say, we understand the concern, but there are plans in place that are going to alleviate those concerns. And once both sites are developed out, that will be handled.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I will make the
All
motion.
right.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion was made by Chairman Passman, second by Vice Chairman McKellen.
You have a question down there?
Yes, Mr. Glover.
There are two, on the Jasper side, there are two parcels there. There's a road that goes in the middle. Is that?
Four
I see
sixty-two
where
is the
red-
what that splits, the two triangles is split by the existing 462.
So it's both property that's being under consideration.
No, one,
No,
just
the one on the left is already zoned.
That's my
It's the one
question.
on the right
So
that
these-
will be zoned to match that zone.
right,
Okay, that's what I needed to find out. Thank you.
okay. All right, do we need a roll call vote? Or
Try it without objection.
let's try it without objection. Without objection?
I have an objection.
Okay, all right, roll call. For rezoning.
Councilmember Tabernick,
Yes.
Councilmember Lawson,
Mark Lawson, yes.
Councilmember Reeds,
Yes.
Councilmember Dawson,
No.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Vice Chair McKellen,
Yes.
Chairman Passman,
Yes.
Committee Vice Chair Glover,
No.
and Chairman Howard.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, and this will go to the full council.
We'll go to full council, and just so council is aware that we are working to provide a little more training to our planning commission. They are in desperate need of additional insight and training for their role and responsibility. So we are working on getting that in place. Thank you.
And also, just so people know, we will offer some kind of workshop for all our council members too, on planning and zoning, so in the near future. Okay, number
Chairman,
13.
yeah, it's just
Oh, yes, sir.
Mr. Greenway said that, you're saying that the planning commission, not doing what the commission to do?
I think
or
I
is
think the
it,
plan, I think the planning commission, so in the state of South Carolina, the planning commission is charged with implementing and carrying out the plans that are given to them by the county council and being that advisory body to you all. So their job is to look at the capital improvements plan, the comprehensive plan, transportation plans, and consider all of those long-term plans in their decision-making process. It appears to me that our planning commission gets bogged down into, one, too much public input from people that do not understand the planning process and are just stating their opinion about what they think should occur. And two, they're interjecting their own personal beliefs too much into the planning process about things. So, yeah, traffic is bad on 170 today, but we have plans in place to correct that you all have been shared. The planning commission needs to consider all of that and say, hey, you know, what does this look like 10, 15, 20 years down the road in this area, and make recommendations accordingly, not make recommendations on the present situation.
Thank you, sir. I would ask that, when you have your training for the planning commission, I sure like to be there myself to get trained as well.
Yeah, we'll.
Thank you, sir.
We're gonna bring in a member of the Association of Counties legal team, a guy by the name of John DeLoach. You all probably received, some of you have probably received training from him. He's an excellent person, and he understands planning and zoning rules and regulations, and Tom and I will be working with him to bring that in, but we'll make sure that we coordinate that with the clerk's office so that council can join that training if they want to without any conflict.
And I'm assuming that your training will be very objective and not subjective.
Yes, sir. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, that's why we're not doing it. That's why
But
we're
you're
bringing
bringing in
that's why
your
we're bringing
people.
in outside counsel.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And we, all of us on county council will be part of that if we want to be. Yep. Okay, number 13, we're almost done. Recommend approval of resolution authorizing the county administrator to execute the necessary documents and provide funding for the purchase of real property identified as the Blocker Field Extension. Yes, ma'am.
Great, I'm back. This time with a project that has made it through the due diligence process. This is the Blocker Field Extension proposed for fee purchase by Beaufort County.
It's a, different slide. There it is. Okay.
Yes,
we're
thank
good.
you.
Mhm.
It is along Sea Island Parkway, right across, right nearby, what we all call Blocker Field and the entrance to St. Helena. The current zoning is T2 rural with the CPO overlay, and the total price for this property is $80,000. It's approximately 1.15 acres. A survey has been completed and a phase 1 has been completed and returned no environmental concerns. This property, if you go to the next slide, is best seen, and you can see that it adds to a couple of other shallow properties that offer immediate visual access to the water and the marshes beyond Chowan Creek, right as the entrance to St. Helena, reinforcing rural land use policies as you travel essentially across an urban growth boundary, which of course is a policy line, but is a visual reminder traveling from a suburban to a rural community. And if you go to the next slide, this is the survey of the property. I forgot I added that in there, but you can see it's a shallow lot. And on the next slide, how several shallow lots along Sea Island Parkway have added to the visual aesthetic that you see and feel when you drive onto St. Helena. The landowner applied to the Rural and Critical Program last year, and again, the board has recommended a purchase of this property, and because of the scenic nature as well as the cooperative relationship between the Open Land Trust and Beaufort County in this area, the Open Land Trust owns and maintains nearby Blocker Field and will provide a maintenance agreement that is agreeable to your legal team and administration prior to closing, such that the Open Land Trust can continue as a maintenance partner should you approve to purchase this property. And the property would be maintained in keeping with the way the Open Land Trust maintains Blocker Field, or if you have any other requests, but that's
Do we have a
the
motion?
recommendation.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
A second?
I'll second it.
All right, second by Ms. Tavernick. Without objection or
no,
discussion?
no.
Any discussion?
No, I just want to echo what Ms. Schaefer said about this property. When you look at Blocker Field was the original plan conservation easement bought by this county. That started the whole entire program, and it has a nice vista on the left side going on St. Helena. And if you're talking about closing a donut hole, this is like closing another donut hole to that vista going on the left-hand side, because beyond that, there's also property that the Rural and Critical Land has in their possession. And so there's only a few other little donut pockets there that eventually I hope we can actually acquire as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Without objection, we will pass and move this forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, we stand adjourned until 5 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff.